So here we have a list of leading solution providers and technology leaders. On the left, I said all top IT companies, because that's a fact. Every big name in IT is today in fields of artificial intelligence. They are doing something or the other in the field of artificial intelligence. Not only every big IT company, every typically every big company is trying to do something or the other in terms of artificial intelligence. Uh, Say for example, banks, they're trying to do things like detecting fake documents, the KYC part of it. You have certain banks onboarding customers first quicker than the others. That's because they're able to do an AI based KYC that is quicker and more instantaneous than the others. Some time back, when I was teaching with an institute, I had got a request from one of the leading banks in India. They had come up with this challenge where they had said that for the loan disbursal thing, the personal loan and the home personal loan basically segment, that they typically take documents to give the loan, but documents can be forged. Genuine documents can be created with forged names. So I can have two PAN cards with two different names. So the PAN card is genuine. How do I identify that fake? So they were trying to do something based on the image of the face photograph, the passport photo that you have to submit when you apply for the loan or opening of an account. So they would try to develop something based on face recognition. So if that face has a history of fraud in their system, they would pass it on to a manual check. Otherwise, further manual check. Otherwise, they will not check it that much. Another use case would be international wire transfers, the online money transfers that happens. Typically, US and other government issues a list of names. Say, Saikat Sarkar is a name that's issued as a known terrorist name. Please don't take it in literal values. I'm just using it an example. Uh, but I do a money transfer and now use S Sarkar. So you need something very intelligent and very sophisticated that would identify uh, whether it's me doing the transaction or someone else doing the transaction, some other S Sarkar trying to do the transaction, uh, and try to prevent fraudulent, terror funding and things like that happening. That's one place where high-end artificial intelligence is being used. Solution providers: Google, Microsoft, IBM, Intel, Oracle, even Alibaba, which is a new entrant in the domain of e-commerce, actually have opened up their cloud infrastructure for public use. They have not only opened up their infrastructure as in terms of the computers that we can use to compute, also some of their algorithms. Companies like Facebook have open source some of their algorithms that typical, if you go to Facebook, if you upload a group photo with a lot of friends, you'll typically see a lot of friends being tagged automatically. A few years back, when you uploaded the image, Facebook would ask you to tag them if you wish to. So what we did is we tagged our friends, and Facebook in the backend actually use that tagged images as their training data, and now they're able to predict if you upload a new image, whose image you have uploaded, and tag it for you, at least for your friends. Uh, Google Photo does that similarly. If you have your Google album classified to yourself by yourself initially of images of various pictures of various persons that you have taken, it tries to automatically tag faces of images of the same person if you upload a new one. Intel, though not too much into the software part of things, but Intel has got a lot of uh, role in terms of designing special computers or processors that would be able to handle computational load. So Google introduced some So basically, again, Google has also come up with a concept called TPUs, which is GPU. Probably those in gaming would know that their high-end gaming laptops have GPU cards, memory cards that are high-end process required for high-end gaming. Google has got a step ahead and introduced TPUs, which is TensorFlow customized. What TensorFlow is? TensorFlow is Google's version of how you could implement a neural network. Uh, Typical neural network, if you had to build from scratch, you will require a lot of knowledge and understanding of integrational calculus, and a lot of other integral calculus, and a lot of mathematical stuff. However, Google has this platform called TensorFlow, uh, which along with TensorFlow, PyTorch, etc., are implementations of so is Thyno, implementations of artificial neural network, which where you don't need to do the calculus bit on yourself. Uh, NumPy is a package that is used uh, to do the integrational calculus. So typically you could do the calculus on NumPy and build your neural network with NumPy, but that would require a lot of time and effort. TensorFlow or PyTorch, Thynos would take a lot of that load off you and do it for yourself. Scikit-learn is probably the most popular machine learning package. Pandas is if you have it's a data analytics package. It's not a proper ML kind of a package or an AI kind of a package, but it's a data analysis package. So if you are looking at any kind of bulk data that you are trying to analyze, uh, Pandas is your thing, provided you are using Python as your tool. Python, the advantage of here I'll add uh, to the whole story why Python is a favorite tool amongst many other tools available to data scientists or data analysts is because Python has a very wide case of implementation. So you could design your website using Python. You could build something like YouTube, which is a content management kind of a structure using Python. Python is used in certain parts of things in NASA. So and John F. Kennedy Research Center. So the extreme high end of uh, scientific calculation to the extreme basic stuff like a basic website to an ERP kind of a stuff to your artificial intelligence to your neural network. So everything else falls into place where with the with the with the same technology stack that you were using. Uh, that makes it easier to move things from testing to production. So typically as a data scientist, say I develop a model algorithm that would predict something and I have to implement it, right? Or otherwise there is implement it for production. So if my production team is also working with Python or are familiar with Python, it becomes very easy for me to get it implemented with my production team, right? Otherwise I would have to build an interface that would say my production team works in Java, so they will be calling my Python, or R code in some other language code and interpreting with it through an API or something like that. So additional workload for me. Keras that you see in this in this slide is the name of a package that forms a mask around TensorFlow or wrap around TensorFlow, PyTorch, and most basic neural network packages, which makes it even more easier for a data scientist to create a neural network and get into the training mode and other stuff. Spark is a distributed computing platform. Uh, Obviously, the package that helps us, it's a package that helps us do it. A lot of you would have heard of things like Hadoop. Spark is built on Hadoop. Initially, it was built on Hadoop. Now you can work without Hadoop on Spark. So basically, Hadoop actually does a distributed storage. Uh, Spark sits on top of Hadoop, used to sit on top of Hadoop. Now you can independently have Spark, which would do the distributed storage as well as distributed computation. So typically, if you take a high-end computer, you're trying to compute a very memory-intensive, processor-intensive piece of algorithm that would probably require a 64 core processor and a 1 TB RAM computer. Now, probably this is still possible to have a physical server, but you cannot expect the server size to keep on increasing every day as and when your computing needs keep on increasing. So that's where your distributed computing comes into picture, where you know, as per your requirement, you add on computing power. So every time you need more computing power, you add on one more computing unit, one more computer, say a small 4-core, a 16 GB RAM computer is added every time you need more computers, and you know, decommission those computers when you don't need them. Typically under typical conventional requirements or typical conventional IT infrastructure world, this would have been a very problematic situation, because you know, buying those computers and then telling I don't need them, you'd screw your IT infrastructure budget. However, with cloud computing, essentially cloud computing was discovered from a situation where Amazon faced a similar problem, where they had bought up a lot of computers for their seasonal sales, the holiday season sales, and then after the season realized that 90% of their computing power is sitting and laying in a waste. So they tried to, you know, start up a new line of business, which is now known as AWS, and is actually powering Amazon in a way that Amazon's revenue as a whole, as a group, comes more from AWS, and is actually, and the e-commerce wing that was the mother setup initially is now you know, kind of subsidized by the profits earned out of AWS. Technology, as I said, TensorFlow is a graph kind of computational setup which Google outsourced for us. Google initially used it. Google is one of the pioneers in the domain of, you know, implementation of artificial neural network. It so happens that most of our technology stack inventors were somewhere, you know, either related to Google or were inspired by white papers released out of Google. TensorFlow is certainly a Google product. Python, the language that we talked of, is a Google product again. It's not an official Google product, in the sense that it was initially developed by a Google employee who was on a vacation then, and then did it as a hobby project. So it's kind of a Google product, but not, you know, hardened first a Google product. TensorFlow typically uses computation in forms of graphs. How it does, we'll get into those details. If you see the background image, you'll see variable 1, 2, 3, and 4 coming in. You can refer back to our previous slide, probably the third or the fourth slide, where we had the house price example, where here each variable would be, say, the size of the house, would be the variable 1. Variable 2 probably would be the number of bedrooms. Variable 3 probably would be the pin code. Locality, variable 4. Variable 5 could probably be, you know, how close is the nearest school, etc., etc. And the graph, it's a graphical. The TensorFlow puts it in a graphical method and kind of moves on from one neural and one layer to another, and, you know, does the computation. As I said, there are multiple types of neural networks. These are the 4 very basic types of neural networks. The feed-forward neural network is a very fast one that we got introduced to or found out, which were basically one layer of neurons finding some kind of learning, doing some kind of testing on those learnings, and passing on that learning and that input to the next layer. The next layer kind of trying to learn and relearn from the mistakes of the previous layer, and so on and so forth, and going forward, so on. Okay, multi-layer perceptron is basically the term came into picture where we were migrating from the single or 2 or 3 layer neural networks to neural networks that had uh, multiple hundreds of layers. Uh, Now the challenge came up when we were dealing with image data, and we were trying to effectively deal with image data. As we when I was talking of image, we I had told of how images are analyzed. It's like when you get an image, it makes multiple frames of the single image. One may be a grayscale one may be a black and white one may be a red and white one. So we'll try to make multiple image frames. So say 128 by 128 image, typical one would be like a normal 128 by 128 pixel image, would not be a output of a 1 megapixel camera. Okay, will be far lower than that. So 128 by 128 image, pixel image, would have 128 by 128 data point as an image. So if we have say 20 data frame, I mean 20 frames with different setups, like one black and white, one grayscale, etc., etc. So that becomes 128 into 128 into 20. So that became difficult for a normal neural network to move on with that kind of data. So that's where the convolutional neural network came into picture, which were better, designed in a way that it was better equipped to handle, uh, deal with concepts like drops and all that stuff. Then came the recurrent neural networks, which is another term for which is the long short-term memory neural network, which is basically feed kind of a feed forward and backward neural network, where we learn and relearn from our previous instances, and we put the data back based on new learnings, and we again go through the same networks. So here the latest time series kind of a data, which where the latest or a folk uh, or a series kind of a forecasting kind of data would better be suited for such cases. Again, the job profiles. These are, the day I was kind of preparing this slide, around the same time, I just kind of randomly picked up a few Google search, news items. Uh, in fact, if you search by the text that 20 sexiest job, the sexiest job of the 21st century, you would find data science as the one in some very reputed publications. The job domain of AI and ML is like ever expanding, as we, see a increasing demand. A space scale, the one in the bottom left corner talks of a huge pay scale for a for a recruit in this domain. However, let's add to it that everyone landing a job may not actually get a that fat paycheck, like a for $140,000 kind of a paycheck. That depends on how important a problem that you are able to solve for the company, how effectively you are able to solve it, and how strongly you are able to convince your recruiter that you will be able to solve that problem for the company. So this is again a split up of jobs available on LinkedIn. You see 45%, 47% of job postings on LinkedIn. Data science jobs coming in on LinkedIn. That's a place where you need to look up if you are looking for data science jobs. A lot of those jobs coming in from United States, a lot of them coming from India also, United Kingdom also, United States and Europe being the lead takers for the jobs. Company-wise, information technology companies, medical companies, banks, marketing and advertising companies. Interestingly, a new entrant is higher education companies, where a typical use case would be probably smart evaluation of the student's profile, where where you are not just judging the student by a few multiple choice questions or a few set of exams questions that he responds back to, the year end, semester end, class end, or weekend exams that we have. They're being judged by a lot more parameters, and then an intelligent relearning or a brush up course is being recommended to the student, and it's more effect students are more effectively learning. So this is a hierarchy of the roles that you would probably get if you get into the data science domain. As a fresher, most likely you will get into something that is called descriptive analysis. Uh, Mostly doing descriptive analysis, where you would describe the problem, so make dashboards, data presentation, and do a few diagnostic analysis. So you would diagnose from the description that you have made, the dashboards you have made, the problem. Okay, the problem lies with the fact that product X is not selling in region Y. So typically, say my smartphone does the latest launched smartphone of company Y doesn't sell well in Kolkata. So we need to find a study. I mean, that's the diagnosis that I have done. Uh, now, now that wouldn't be the end of our analysis. The next high level analysis would be the predict. So I need to predict what would be the potential sell volumes over the next 3 months, or say 1 year of the product. So that would help my production line build those number of phones, right? And then the prescriptive analysis. So if I, for example, if I go and tell my CEO, for the next 3 months, your sales is going to go down, and it'll be bloodbath. He will probably look at the charts and tell, okay, we are not looking ahead of the blood, looking ahead at the blood. Probably we are, almost seeing that start. I have already problems. So what, you just told me there's a bad blood, but you didn't give me a solution to it. So why do I need you to do a doomsday prediction? I don't need you. But if you could go and tell them, okay, you know what, people in East are not buying your phone because they have a challenge with the touch screen. What if we could, give them a Bluetooth keypad, that could help them with, say, typing in Bengali. So you have a Bengali index keypad added to the phone, a touchpad probably, but it has facilitates Bengali typing, and boom, your sales go up. So that is prescriptive analytics, where you prescribe what is required for the which feature that you require, or what. Uh, uh, Obviously, with each level of analytics or change in job profile, your difficulty rises, the challenges, the complexity rises. Big data analytics is a subdomain of data analytics where where we are dealing with not just numerical and text data. We are dealing with images, audios, feed from social media. So typically, if I had to say predict what all features would sell like hotcake in my next product launch, uh, what people are talking about in say Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., about the latest say phones that they want to buy, or they about the new features they're liking, the new phones that are getting launched, would be a very meaningful insight. Again, another source of data is IoT devices. The example that we had seen of an automated car, an automated self-drive car, even not a full automatic self-drive car, semi-automatic car, which would probably have early warning systems where if you are crossing the lane, or if a neighboring car comes in very close to you, would have IoTs built in and would have thousands of data points being generated. Or typically a plane, a big aircraft that flies, a passenger plane that flies, generates few hundreds of GBs of data every flight. They have that many IoTs put in, and that many data points getting generated every second. That's where Pilot could put in That's how a pilot can put in the plane in autopilot mode and still be safe. Typical job profiles are big data engineers, ML engineers, AI engineers. Engineers are equivalent to I mean, you typically have designations either as engineers or analysts. Engineers are more where you have the implementation part of it on your head also. Analysts would typically have not have that much of implementation part on their as their job responsibility. They would more have designing of the model, designing of analyzing the data, presenting the data and all that stuff, more on their workload. The hottest profiles in this world are of that of a data scientist or an artificial intelligence expert, uh, specialist. Artificial intelligence specialist could be where you are, working with, say, a problem like you're working with a BPO, say for example, and you have call flows coming in, right? A BPO or a call center. So you say that why have QCs, manual, QAs doing QCs of calls. What we'll do is we'll find out calls that will analyze the calls automatically and find out every time the customer is sounding sad, angry, or upset in the call, and we'll have a flag like real time. So if there are too many red flags of unhappy customers, unhappiness expressed by the customer, probably a supervisor could jump in on the call right away, even before the call ends, and resolve the problem better. A data scientist, on the other hand, would be uh, dealing with all kinds of data, uh, and would also be doing machine learning and artificial intelligence, and also at times be developing rule based models, conventional if else kind of models, depending on the situation and the program or the challenge, that's the problem statement. uh, Another very prized profile is a full stack developer. A full stack developer is a guy who could develop the model, I mean develop the whole thing from how the data is getting collected to how it's being analyzed to a prediction model to how an API is built and it's integrated to production, and the responses come out probably real time. So he would have knowledge of data modeling, he would have knowledge of artificial intelligence or ML algorithms, he would have knowledge of cloud computing and a whole lot of other things, and would also be knowing a little bit of implementation languages apart from Python, say Java or C Sharp or things like that.